Hello and welcome to Loving and Leaving Clonmel. In this series, we share the stories of Clonmel natives who've moved away and are now living all over the world. We'll hear about their roots, what they miss most, and what life is like for them now. In this episode, writer Rosaleen Quinlan speaks to Una McDonald, who is now based in Toronto, Canada.
When I get together now, I go home about twice a year. When I get together with the brothers, they, very often say that we were very lucky to grow up in such a great town. But Clonmel had everything you could want for culturally, sport-wise. Anything. It was in the town. Music, opera, Irish dancing, whatever you wanted, it was there.
Una McDonald, or Una Lunnigan as she was then, was born in Clonmel and grew up there in the late 60s and 70s. She's lived in Canada now for the last 45 years and enjoys Toronto for its great mix of cultural activities, music and access to the great outdoors. These are actually the same things she enjoyed in Clonmel in her childhood, where sport, music and dance thrived. As a young girl, Una even played the part of a little demon in a production of the opera Faust. While most local people didn't have the means to travel much then, there was a vibrant life right in the heart of the town.
Una, I think you were the only girl in the family.
Exactly, because I'm number 4 of 8 and the rest of them are all boys. I have 7 brothers and I'm the only girl. Everyone assumed I was spoiled. I always said I was special. I wasn't spoiled because I had to do my share of, household chores. I had to fight my corner. Yep. And many a tear was shed. But anyway, we got through it.
There were lots of families with kids on Gladstone Street at that time.
A lot of them sort of in around our age, which was kind of nice. I guess the parents must have been similar ages, but we had all the children of the shopkeepers along the street that we could play with. It was difficult, actually, because we were on the street. None of us really had what we call a back garden. And you did end up being out on the street quite a bit. Well, there was a lane across the way that we played in quite a bit. Even though we were on the street, we got into roller skating and playing marbles and hopscotch and bicycling, all those things you kind of did on the front street, which was probably hair-raising for our parents.
And where did you live on Gladstone Street?
Do you know where McDonald's is now in Clonmel? That was Sutton's Coal, and it was a hardware store fronted with a hardware store, and then there was all kinds of grains and coal and everything down the back. In the backyard, every store was wide open and everything was there. Sutton's Coal was where I was living, and that was hardware, which led next to the butcher. And then there was O'Connor's, the fish shop, and then Simpson's, the beautiful grocery store. And so it went right around into O'Connell Street. The other side, there was Moran's, the chemist, and around to, with several beautiful bakeries, and the Co-op, Woolworths, Burke's Bacon. It just seemed to be a thriving, bustling town.
So all the shops you needed were right there in town.
And that was a big part of our life because, like in the kids, we were sent for messages. And funny, we always laugh about when you'd be sent for a pound of sausages to Burke's Bacon, you had to come back with the pound that had 16 sausages, not 14, because 16 would be enough for 2 sausages each for the kids. My father probably got a chop. But, it was like everybody, I think, in that main street knew us, because we were always taking turns going around to shop. But lots of 8 to 10 kid families, yeah, they did. They all had to be very resourceful, I think, yeah. Amazing women, absolutely, to make things stretch, My mum was a blow-in, as they called it back then, from Dundalk. And that was an adjustment for her. Can you imagine, how many people travel now? But to come from Dundalk to Clonmel was huge change, God bless. My mother managed to mind 8 of us in that premises with no garden or anything, So it was hard going. But We got through, and we were lucky enough that my father was from Lisrona, and that's where he was born and raised. And so my uncle was out there managing the farm that he grew up on. And we'd go out there. Some of us would go out for several days for vacation. Others would just be day trips. But it was really nice to have that escape.
Things were a little bit different, I suspect, on the farm than in town.
Yes, and going for water and everything. Can you imagine? There was no running water, and my brothers tried to scare me lots of times. We'd have to go out at night to the outhouse, to the bathroom, and they'd sort of go out and wait for you and jump out on top of you.
Did you go to school in the Sister of the Charity?
First, yeah, and then the Loretto. Yeah. It's probably changed a lot from my time, I'm sure.
Did you like school?
Yes, for the most part, yeah. Academically, I did okay. And then in Loretto, I was in the orchestra and I did piano lessons. I played hockey. I had a lot of interest in school. Yeah.
The nuns were quite strong on music in Loretto.
They were, yeah. We had a full orchestra. Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah. I was the violin very badly. I think I brought it home. I brought home the violin once to practice at home, and I think my mother nearly fell down laughing. It was screeching so much.
You were very interested in tennis. You spent a lot of time in Hillview.
Yeah, Hillview was huge. I think every one of us joined Hillview, and not only did we do the tennis, there was the pitch and putt. And again, my brother Kieran reminded me that we were at the discos there. They had discos in Hillview, as well as they had discos in the island. Yeah.
Then as now, there were lots of active clubs and societies in Clonmel.
Yes, there was a lot going on. I mean, gosh, I think she was well known in the town. Miss O'Mara's Irish Dance School, St. Mary's Choral Society. I mean, anything. And then there was the Irish, Cayleys at night as well. So lots of things going on. And they were their school. And yeah, you go down there for, meager amount of pence and have your lesson. Yeah. Oh, they were great. I think they had to put discipline on us because, a bunch of little ones just, unruly probably. So lots of places to get out and enjoy yourself for sure.
People gathered for different processions throughout the year. In May, for Corpus Christi in June, and in August, the Walk to the Cross.
Clonmel, it had, annual pilgrimage up to the cross, which would be around the August bank holiday. And a huge amount of people in the town would come out for that. And then there was the May processions and the Corpus Christi processions in June. And they were a big part of the town as well. And when I was 7, I actually did Crown Our Lady. So that was quite an event for me. It was one of the processions where you parade through the town and you were on display, and then you ended up in the church and crowning Our Lady. That was eventful. I think by virtue of the fact that I had so many brothers that they picked me for that job.
Christmas time, there was a less solemn procession, the Santa Parade. Famous Clonmel band leader Mick Delahunty and his fellow musicians would play from a float which paraded through town, with the local children running along beside it in high excitement.
Yes, there was a truck that Mick Dell and Billy Kenrick, who played the organ in the local St. Peter and Paul's church, and they'd be on the back of the truck and just making merry on Christmas Eve, and the truck would travel all the way down to Ferryhouse. And that was quite an occasion for the town. Absolutely, and follow the truck as far as they were allowed. We had Féile Clonmel too. Do you remember that? Féile? Well, the fesh every year, there was singing and dancing, all kinds of things. And a lot of the people in the town would enter, and I think most people ended up getting a medal at some point in their time in it. But it was a fun thing to be part of.
Lots of things don't change. I'm guessing as kids you loved a trip to the beach like kids do now.
Dromore or Clonmel, and then we often depended on friends to get us down there. I remember we'd be thrilled if a friend invited you to go to the seaside because it was hard for us all to go.
There were 2 cinemas in Clonmel then.
There was 2 main theatres, the Oisin and then the Regal was down the other end of town. The Oisin Theatre up in O'Connell Street went up in flames while I was right there in Gladstone Street. And that was terrifying because it felt like the whole street, O'Connell Street, had gone up in flames. It was almost like the end of the world. The flames were shooting up into the air. It was incredible. Yeah, it was terrifying. Yeah, it really was. I remember my mother was petrified too. And of course, she passed it on to the rest of us that were there. The window that we were able to look out the back, you could see the whole street. It looked like the whole street was on fire.
Wasn't there a fire at the dance hall as well, at Collins Hall?
It did, as you know, went up in flames as well. And that was quite a traumatic time for the town, really, because it was quite a huge fire. And they were very scared that it would spread to Mulcahy's, which was close by, and that there was the fish and chip shop there, Matasses and everything. And some of those had to come over and get out of their premises. They came over to our house. Yeah. And my mom made tea and whatever she had for the firemen. Yeah.
For those who haven't heard of it, coursing is a sport which involves the chasing of hares with greyhounds, where the dogs are tested on their ability to run and to turn a hare. In Ireland, the national coursing meeting is held in February each year at the racecourse in Clonmel. It's still a major event, but in the 1970s, when Una was a child, it was a huge festival in the town.
The coursing was a big part of our family. Clonmel was legendary for the coursing, and people from all around the country, especially Dundalk, where my uncle was, they'd all come down and we'd have to house a whole bunch of them for the coursing. And yeah, it was quite an event in February. Yeah, every year.
Did you have lots of visitors and have to put them up and everything? It must have been very busy for your mother.
She was a great woman for getting out the frying pan, rashers and the sausages and the whole bit. Yeah, no, she was fantastic. Yeah. It was great, but I think everybody enjoyed it. My brother Kieran was big into the greyhounds and that, having been out the country with my uncle. And he won the coursing in 2002 with a dog called Limousine because he named him after our surname, Lonergan, and gave him an L, a name beginning with L. And the other thing that was, I remember as a child, was going out to the Care Road for the Brassy Cup. It was open coursing. We go out and you had to help raise the hares. We just loved going out through the fields, raising the hares. And the best part, of course, was afterwards when you got sandwiches and buns were given to all who helped out. That was huge. Part of growing up was greyhounds. I guess some families, it was really part of their life. We embraced it. We loved it. Yeah.
On the fair day in the town, the sounds of the countryside came to the streets, literally.
I remember it well, and all the cattle and, the nests that they would make, and horses and cows, and how the night before, it was always on a Wednesday, and on a Tuesday night, they had to board up the premises of the whole street, really, to try and make sure that no glass was broken or windows broken. Yeah. And I remember it well, and it was quite an occasion, and they also had little stalls where you could go and buy things, and I remember being intrigued by that, and wishing I had money because I was quite young.
Speaking of money, Una told us how her and some of her brothers used to make some money as teenagers.
As we got older, we would go work for Bulmers, to pick the currants. I had at least two brothers who picked the apples for Bulmers. That was hard work picking, both jobs, but I remember you had to try and get at least 4 pails of currants every day. That was your target. And it was very hard filling a bucket with currants. We'd cycle down and you'd be filthy after them. I had a few friends that we'd cycle down together and we'd challenge each other, to fill our buckets more, and then you'd have to get them weighed, and then we'd help each other if they didn't make the weight. And it was just, it was hard. But we loved it. I think we tried to get £1 a day, to earn £1.
Once she left school, Una did a course in Dublin. Was it a big change, Una, moving to the big city after Clonmel?
It was a bit of a jump, but as young people, we just got used to it. I was lucky in that I was in a flat with other Clonmel people. So we adjusted together, shall we say. I joined a tennis club, and that's where I met my husband because he was playing the cricket. Yeah. A lot of couples came out of there. Another one of the girls in the flat, she met her husband there also.
Your first job was with Guinness. They were considered to be a very good employer at the time, I believe.
It was, I think, considered at the time. Yes, I did feel lucky to get in. You had to have obviously a certain level of shorthand and typing and to get you over to that stage. Yeah.
Did you like working there?
Loved it. Yeah, it was a great place, and gosh, can you imagine? We had like white tablecloth, 3-course lunch every day, which was part of the job, like free. And they had the swimming pool, they had medical department, hockey, all the sports. It was great. Yeah, it was great.
Una married the young man she met at the tennis club. Her new husband was offered a 2-year contract in Canada, where opportunities were better than they were in 1980s Ireland. And so they emigrated, initially for 2 years, first to Halifax and later moving to Toronto, where she has now lived for over 40 years. Was leaving Ireland difficult, Una?
Yes, it was really difficult because I was the only girl and he was in big trouble whisking me off to another country, 7-hour flight and everything. My father never wanted to fly, so he never came over, but my mom was really good about coming over. Just when you start to have children, everything, one thing led to another. And when we came, it was almost like on an extended adventure and holiday. It was going to be 2 years. So we didn't really think about bringing something that we might really want from Clonmel. But as the years went by, I had my mother send the Clonmel Nationalist, which was the local newspaper, so that I could keep up with what Clonmel people were up to. And you would scour the paper. It was a weekly, right? You would scour it to see, was there someone you knew? Was by any chance a picture of you? Everyone kind of went for the Nationalist. You had to almost fight your corner to read it. We came in 1980 and things sort of in the early 80s got gradually, economically got a little worse, and we weren't sure what we would go home to in 1982 or 83 because we had let it lapse where we could go back to my husband's job. So then it became kind of scary as to what we would go back to at that point. We went home after 2 years to tell them that we're not staying. Did not go over well, as you can imagine.
Lots of Irish people now have grandchildren in Sydney and Perth and Vancouver. Technology and faster travel make things a little easier. But in the 1980s, it was tough. Phone calls on the landline were expensive, and letters were still the main way of staying in touch.
I realise now with my own grandchildren that, my goodness, what a thing I did to my parents, because I love to see my grandchildren. They barely saw them. They had to rely on the post, which they literally fell over trying to get to the front door when my letter would come. I still have all my mom's letters. In fact, I made a book of them. During COVID, I wrote up, I typed up all her letters and made a book and made a copy for all my brothers, which I have 7.
It's always hard, isn't it? Today, there are lots of families considering whether to move back from Australia. Was that something you thought about, moving back from Canada?
My husband was doing okay in his job and everything, and it was like, do we go back? Do we not? So finally, I think we kind of left it too late because our children would have been late starting to learn Irish in school and that kind of thing. So we just kept staying. It's always like, if you go back, it won't be the same, will it? You know, at the time they called it the $2,000 mistake because you went home and then you decided you didn't really like it and you came back. And so spent a lot of money going home and back. Yeah. The nice part was that people were kind of curious to come out and see where we were. And so we got quite a few visitors, which was nice.
It must have been quite different to your childhood when your own children came along.
I mean, we started out living on the east coast of Canada in Halifax, Nova Scotia, but then we moved into Toronto, which wasn't near the sea. So we didn't have things like in Clonmel, you could go to Tramore or Clonmel. So where we are in Toronto, it was part of the culture here that the kids at age 4 would start learning how to ice skate, and then they would jump from that to playing ice hockey.
There was a lot to adjust to. And you worked outside the home in Canada too.
Yes, it was good because I went straight to, again, a secretarial job, and I actually got working for insurance brokers, and I stayed there until I had my second baby, and then I stayed home. And then when the boys were, I think the youngest was 13, I decided I'd try and go back to work.
How do you find Canadian people?
For the most part, I have always found the Canadians very tolerant and really love the Irish. Even just last week, I was introduced to a lady by her sister-in-law, and she said, "Don't you love her accent?" And I'm looking at her thinking, 45 years later, she thinks I have an accent, but maybe, I guess I do. They call it mid-Atlantic. Yeah, the Canadians were just in love with the Irish as far as we know, you know. People coming, aren't there, you know?
Do you get to visit home much?
My husband's retired now, and it's just like we can do it. So it's nice to keep that connection of going home.
Young Irish people are indeed still going to Canada in numbers. I asked Una what she loves most about where she lives and what she would miss most if she had to leave.
Toronto would be like Dublin, having, you know, sport facilities and concert venues and anything you could want. They usually came to Toronto. And theatre. And then not too far away, there was theatre in Niagara-on-the-Lake, the George Bernard Shaw Festival. Bradford is not far from Toronto, and it has the Shakespeare Festival. In fact, yes, it's amazing, all the lovely things that are in and around Toronto as well as Toronto. We love the summers. You're guaranteed a good summer. And I think that's what we miss most of all. Well, besides friends and family, the climate, you're guaranteed a good summer. And then the winter, wouldn't miss the winter. Severe.
Severe winters or not, Una is happy in Toronto, but she does love to visit Ireland regularly to share a laugh with her many friends in Clonmel. And of course, those 7 brothers.
That was an episode of Loving and Leaving Clonmel, a project by the Clonmel Junction Arts Festival in partnership with the Tipperary Museum of Hidden History. It was created by Artistic Director Rebecca Lenihan with podcast consultant Siobhan McHugh and Tipperary Museum Curator Marie McMahon. Technical production is by Michael Durick, with original music composed by Eamon O'Malley. Clonmel Junction Arts Festival is principally funded by the Arts Council and Tipperary County Council.